I killed a man when I was 9 years old. Well, technically, I brought him back to life. But for 3 days, billionaire Theron Caldwell was dead to the world, and I was the only person on Earth who knew he was still breathing. Have you ever had a moment where everyone thought you were crazy, but you absolutely knew, you were the only sane person in the room? That was me, a 9-year-old kid with no hair and dirty clothes, standing in front of 200 of America's richest people, screaming that the dead man in the casket wasn't actually dead. I can still feel the weight of their stares. Every single person in that cathedral turned to look at me. This homeless little girl who had somehow snuck into the most exclusive funeral in New York City. The security guards were already moving toward me. The widow in her perfect black Chanel dress had gone pale as fresh snow, and there I was, my voice cracking as I shouted the words that would change everything. "Please don't bury him. He's still alive." Nobody believed me at first. Why would they? I was just street trash to them, a crazy kid who'd probably wandered in looking for food. But I knew what I'd heard. I knew what Delphine Caldwell and that doctor had planned. And if nobody listened to me, Theron Caldwell, the man who'd once given me $5 and a kind smile when everyone else looked through me like I was invisible, would be buried alive. The thing about being homeless is that people talk around you like you don't exist. They share secrets right in front of you because to them, you're not really a person. You're just part of the scenery, like a trash can or a fire hydrant. That's how I heard them 3 nights earlier, standing in the alley behind the Plaza Hotel. Delphine's voice had been cold as winter rain. The tetrodotoxin will slow his heart to nothing. Even the best doctors won't detect a pulse. We bury him, wait 3 months for the will to clear, and then we're free. But here's the part that still gives me chills, even 20 years later. As the security guards reached for me, as everyone started murmuring about calling the police, something made me look at the casket, and I swear on everything holy, I saw his finger twitch, just the smallest movement, like he was trying to scream but couldn't. That's when Bronwyn Caldwell, Theron's sister, stood up. She was 73 years old, dressed in designer everything, tears streaming down her face. But she looked at me, really looked at me, and said 5 words that saved her brother's life. What if she's telling truth? The room exploded. Delphine started screaming that this was insane, that I was clearly disturbed, that someone needed to get me out of there immediately. The funeral director was wringing his hands, talking about regulations and death certificates. The guests were pulling out their phones, some calling 911, others already recording what they thought would be viral content of a crazy kid disrupting a billionaire's funeral. But Bronwyn walked straight to me, her heels clicking on the marble floor like a countdown clock. She knelt down, this woman worth hundreds of millions, and looked me right in the eyes. "Tell me everything you know," she said, "and tell me fast." My hands were shaking as I explained about the toxin, about how it came from some rare fish, about how there was a way to reverse it with a concentrated saline solution that would neutralize the paralysis. I told her about the conversation I'd overheard, about Dr. Lorcan Hale, and how he'd signed the death certificate without even checking properly. I talked so fast the words tumbled over each other, but Bronwyn listened to every single one. Then she did something that nobody expected. She stood up, walked to the funeral director, and said, "Open the casket. Now." The room went silent. Even the crying stopped. Delphine's face had gone from pale to gray, and she was gripping her Hermes purse so tight her knuckles were white. Dr. Hale, who'd been standing near the back, was already edging toward the door. "This is insane," Delphine whispered. "You can't seriously be listening to some homeless child. Think about what you're doing to Theron's memory. Think about the media. Think about—" "I'm thinking," Bronwyn interrupted, "about my brother. Open it." The funeral director looked like he might faint. "Ma'am, I really can't. The regulations, the health department—" I'll take full responsibility, Bronwyn said, and I'll pay whatever fines. Open the casket. What happened next was like something out of a movie, except it was my life, and I was standing right there watching it unfold. Two of Theron's nephews stepped forward and lifted the casket lid. There he was, Theron Caldwell, one of the richest men in America, looking peaceful and very, very dead. Except I knew better. I'd seen death plenty of times on the streets. Real death has a quality to it, a stillness that goes beyond sleep. This wasn't that, this was something else. The saline, I said, my voice barely a whisper now. We need concentrated saline, like what they use in hospitals for severe dehydration. If we inject it, that could kill him, Dr. Hale suddenly shouted from across the room. Everyone turned to look at him, and I'll never forget the expression on his face when he realized what he'd just said. How can you kill someone who's already supposed to be dead? Bronwyn's eyes narrowed. Someone call 911. Tell them we need paramedics and police. Now. Then she turned to me. How do we make this solution? My mind was racing. I'd heard them talking about it, but I didn't know the exact measurements. Still, I remembered something from my time at the free clinic, watching the nurses work. Salt water, I said. But really concentrated, like 9 grams of salt per 100 milliliters of water, and it has to go straight into a vein. One of the guests, a woman I later learned was a retired nurse, stepped forward. I have medical training. If we're really doing this, and God help us all, someone needs to get salt and distilled water from the kitchen and a clean syringe. The next 10 minutes were the longest of my life. The retired nurse, Margaret, worked with shaking hands to mix the solution while 200 people watched in stunned silence. Delphine had collapsed into a chair, clutching her chest like she might have a heart attack. Dr. Hale was being blocked from leaving by 2 of Theron's cousins who'd positioned themselves by the door. When Margaret finally had the syringe ready, she looked at Bronwyn. If this goes wrong, do it, Bronwyn said. Margaret found a vein in Theron's arm. The needle went in. The plunger pushed down. And then, nothing. 1 minute passed. 2, 3. People started shifting, murmuring. Someone said we should call the police on me for desecrating a corpse. Delphine had found her voice again, shrieking about lawsuits and mental hospitals. And then, Theron Caldwell coughed. It wasn't a big cough. Just a small, dry sound, but in that silent cathedral, it might as well have been a bomb going off. Then he coughed again, harder this time. His eyes fluttered. His chest rose and fell with a real, deep breath. And then, Theron Caldwell, who'd been declared dead 48 hours earlier, opened his eyes and said, "Why the hell am I in a coffin?" You're probably wondering how a homeless 9-year-old kid ended up at a billionaire's funeral in the first place. To understand that, I need to tell you about the 3 months before that day. The 3 months that taught me that sometimes the richest people are the poorest, and the poorest people are the richest. I'd been living on the streets of Manhattan for almost a year by then. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. How does a kid that young survive alone in New York City? The truth is, you learn fast or you don't survive at all. I learned which restaurants threw out fresh food at which times. I learned which security guards would look the other way when I snuck into the subway for warmth. I learned that the public library was the safest place during the day, and that the area under the Brooklyn Bridge had a hidden spot where nobody would bother you at night. But most importantly, I learned how to be invisible. Being invisible is an art when you're homeless. You can't be too dirty or people call the cops. You can't be too clean or people ask questions. You have to find that perfect balance where you just fade into the background. The alopecia actually helped with that. People would see a bald kid and immediately look away, uncomfortable with what they thought was cancer or some other disease they didn't want to think about. I'd run away from my last foster home after my foster father decided that a kid with no hair was creepy and started locking me in the basement at night. He said it was for my own good that I needed to learn discipline. What I learned was how to pick locks and how to run really, really fast. The system had failed me 7 times by then. 7 different foster homes, each worse than the last. Social workers who meant well but had 50 other kids to worry about. Case files that got lost. Emergency placements that turned into nightmares. When you're a kid with a visible difference like alopecia, you're either treated like you're made of glass or like you're contaminated. There's no in between. So I chose the streets. At least there, the dangers were honest. I first saw Theron Caldwell on a Tuesday in September. I was sitting outside a Starbucks on Fifth Avenue, hoping someone would drop change or maybe leave half a sandwich behind. That's when this older man walked out. Expensive suit, silver hair, the kind of shoes that probably cost more than most people's rent. But what I noticed most were his eyes. They looked tired. Not sleepy tired, but soul tired. The kind of tired I recognized from looking in mirrors. He stopped right in front of me. Most rich people, when they notice you at all, either throw money at you like you're a problem they can pay to go away, or they speed up and pretend you don't exist. But Theron sat down on the sidewalk next to me. Just sat down in his $1,000 suit like it was nothing. "Rough day?" he asked. I almost laughed. "Rough year," I said. He smiled, this sad, understanding smile. "Yeah, me too." We sat there for maybe 5 minutes, not saying anything. Then he pulled out his wallet, handed me a $5 bill, and said something I'll never forget. "Whatever battle you're fighting, don't give up. The world needs fighters." After he left, I followed him. I don't know why exactly. Maybe because he was the first person in months who'd talked to me like I was human. I watched him walk 3 blocks to the Caldwell Enterprises building, this massive glass tower with his name literally written in gold letters across the front. Over the next few weeks, I started learning his routine. Not in a creepy way. I just found myself gravitating to the places where he'd be. The Starbucks every Tuesday and Thursday morning, the park bench where he'd eat lunch alone on Wednesdays, the cancer ward at Mount Sinai where he'd visit every Friday afternoon, though I never found out who he was visiting. That's how I learned about Delphine. She was everything you'd expect a trophy wife to be. 30 years younger than him, legs for days. The kind of beautiful that looks painful to maintain. She'd show up sometimes when he was at lunch, always with some emergency that needed his credit card or his signature. He'd give her whatever she wanted, but that tired look in his eyes would get a little deeper each time. I heard other things too, lurking around the edges of rich people's lives. The businessmen smoking outside the building would gossip like old ladies. Theron was worth $800 million. His first wife had died of cancer 5 years ago. That explained the hospital visits. He'd married Delphine 2 years later, after what everyone called a whirlwind romance, but what sounded more like a grief-stricken mistake to me. The marriage was falling apart. Delphine had been caught with her personal trainer, then with Theron's lawyer, then with some Instagram influencer half her age. Theron had tried marriage counseling, tried trips to Europe, tried everything except the obvious solution of divorce. Because here's the thing about Theron Caldwell that nobody understood. He didn't believe in giving up on people. That would have been admirable if the people deserved it. Dr. Lorcan Hale entered the picture in October. He was Theron's personal physician, had been for 20 years. Tall guy, always wearing these ridiculous bow ties with hands that shook just a little. Probably from the drinking problem everyone pretended not to notice. He'd been coming around more often, and not for medical reasons. I'd see him and Delphine having coffee when Theron was in meetings, whispering in corners, exchanging looks that weren't quite romantic but were definitely planning something. The night I overheard them was pure accident. I'd found a good spot behind the Plaza Hotel where they threw out barely touched food from events. I was digging through the dumpster. Yeah, I know, glamorous. When I heard voices in the loading dock. "The tetrodotoxin arrived this morning," Dr. Hale was saying, "completely undetectable after death. It'll look like a massive heart attack." "How long?" Delphine asked. "Once administered, 6 hours until complete paralysis. The heart rate will slow to maybe 1 beat per minute. Any doctor would declare him dead. After burial, he'd last maybe another hour before actual death. And the money? The will is ironclad. Everything goes to you as the surviving spouse. $800 million in assets, the company, the properties, all of it. My heart was pounding so hard I thought they'd hear it. I pressed myself against the dumpster, trying to become part of the shadow. When? Delphine asked. Thursday night, his usual nightcap. I'll make a house call Friday morning, declare him dead, sign the certificate. The funeral home I've arranged won't ask questions. They never do when this much money is involved. By Sunday afternoon, he'll be in the ground. And if someone gets suspicious? Who would? His sister Bronwyn lives in Connecticut and barely visits. He has no children. The board of directors will be too busy fighting over his position to question anything. And I'm his doctor of 20 years. My word is beyond reproach. They left after that, and I sat there in the dark for an hour, shaking. Not from cold, but from the weight of what I knew. Theron Caldwell, the only person who'd shown me genuine kindness in a year, was going to be murdered, and I was the only person in the world who knew about it. I tried to think of what to do. Go to the police? A homeless kid with no proof accusing a respected doctor and a billionaire's wife? They'd laugh me right into juvenile detention. Warn Theron? How would I even get close to him? Security at his building was tighter than Fort Knox. I spent Thursday watching his building, trying to figure out a plan. I saw him leave at 7 p.m., looking more tired than usual. Delphine was with him, playing the loving wife, her hand on his arm. Dr. Hale's car was already at their penthouse building when they arrived. By Friday morning, the news was everywhere. Billionaire Theron Caldwell dead at 62. Heart attack, they said. Sudden but not unexpected given his stress levels and family history. Dr. Lorcan Hale gave a statement about how he'd done everything possible, but sometimes the heart just gives out. The funeral was set for Sunday at St. Patrick's Cathedral, the most exclusive funeral of the year, the news called it. Politicians, celebrities, business moguls, everyone who was anyone would be there, and somehow so would I. Getting into that funeral was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I couldn't just walk in. Security was checking names at the door. But here's something about big events. They always need extra help. The catering company was bringing in day workers for setup. I snuck into their van at 5 a.m., hid behind stacks of chairs, and made myself useful enough carrying things that nobody questioned the bald kid in borrowed church clothes I'd stolen from a donation bin. By the time the guests started arriving, I was hiding in the choir loft. I watched them file in, hundreds of New York's elite, all in designer black, air-kissing and networking, even at a funeral. Delphine was in the front row, a black veil covering her face but not the satisfied set of her shoulders. Dr. Hale was 2 rows back, sweating despite the air conditioning. Bronwyn Caldwell arrived last just before the service started. She looked exactly like Theron. Same sharp features, same tired eyes. She sat alone in the family section, while Delphine surrounded herself with her young friends. The priest started talking about Theron's generosity, his business acumen, his charitable work. All true things, but they felt hollow in that grand space. Nobody mentioned how he sat with homeless kids. Nobody talked about the tired kindness in his eyes. And then they brought in the casket. It was massive, solid mahogany with gold handles. It took 8 men to carry it. They set it at the front of the cathedral, and that's when I knew I couldn't wait any longer. If they buried him, he'd die for real. The saline solution had to be administered while the tetrodotoxin was still active, while his body was still technically alive even if it appeared dead. I stood up in the choir loft. 200 faces turned to look at me. Security guards started moving, and I opened my mouth and screamed the truth as loud as I could. "He's not dead! Please, somebody listen to me! He's not dead!" The moment Theron's eyes opened in that coffin, the entire cathedral erupted into complete chaos. People were screaming, phones were out recording everything, and Delphine's face was a masterpiece of horror. She went from pale to green to a shade of gray. I didn't know human faces could turn. "Theron!" Bronwyn rushed to her brother, tears streaming down her face. "Oh my God, Theron, can you hear me?" He was trying to sit up in the coffin, his movements sluggish and uncoordinated. "Bronwyn." His voice was rough, like he'd been screaming but no sound had come out. What happened? Why am I... That's when his eyes found Delphine. The confusion in his face shifted to something else, not quite understanding, but the beginning of it. Like when you wake up from a nightmare and you're not sure what was real. "You were poisoned," I said, stepping closer. Everyone turned to look at me again, but this time it wasn't with dismissal. This time they were listening. "Your wife and your doctor gave you tetrodotoxin. It's from a puffer fish. It makes your heart beat so slow that everyone thinks you're dead, but you're actually still alive, just paralyzed." Theron's hand went to his throat. I remember. The brandy tasted strange. Lorcan said it was a new brand. "Lorcan!" Bronwyn whipped around, scanning the crowd. "Where is that bastard?" But Dr. Hale was already at the door, trying to push past the two cousins blocking his way. "This is insane!" he was shouting. "I don't have to listen to this. That child is clearly disturbed." "Then you won't mind waiting for the police," one of the cousins said, grabbing his arm. The sirens were already getting closer. Someone, probably multiple someones, had called 911. The cathedral was like a pressure cooker about to explode. Rich people weren't used to drama they weren't controlling. Delphine suddenly found her voice. "This is ridiculous. My husband had a heart attack. This resurrection nonsense is clearly some kind of scam. That child probably gave him something to make it look like..." "Shut up!" Theron's voice was quiet, but it cut through the noise like a knife. He was sitting up fully now, his color coming back. "Just shut up, Delphine." The paramedics burst in then, a whole team of them, followed closely by the police. The lead paramedic took one look at the scene, the open coffin, the man sitting up in it, the crowd of shocked faces, and said, "What the hell is going on here?" Bronwyn took charge. This man was poisoned with tetrodotoxin and declared dead falsely. We administered a saline solution that counteracted the paralysis. He needs immediate medical attention. The paramedic's eyes widened. "Tetrodotoxin? Who diagnosed this?" "I did," I said, stepping forward. "I heard them planning it. Her and him." I pointed at Delphine and Dr. Hale. The room exploded again. Delphine was screaming about lawsuits and defamation. Dr. Hale was demanding a lawyer. The guests were either recording everything or trying to leave. And in the middle of it all, Theron was being helped out of his own coffin by paramedics who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. "We need to get him to the hospital," the lead paramedic said. "If this is really TTX poisoning, there could be residual effects, nerve damage, respiratory issues." "I'm going with him," Bronwyn said. "So am I," Delphine said, trying to play the concerned wife. "No," Theron said, "you're not." He looked at the police officers who'd arrived. "Officers, I believe my wife and my physician attempted to murder me. I want them arrested." The lead officer, a woman with sergeant stripes, looked between all of us. "Sir, that's a very serious accusation. We'll need evidence." "Check her purse," I said suddenly. The words came out before I could think about them. When I heard them talking, she said she'd keep the backup dose with her in case the first one didn't work completely. Delphine clutched her purse tighter. "This is illegal search and seizure. You can't—" "Ma'am, we can get a warrant," the sergeant said. "Or you can voluntarily show us the contents of your purse and clear this up right now." The cathedral went silent. 200 pairs of eyes fixed on Delphine. She looked around wildly, like a trapped animal seeking escape. Then she made the mistake that sealed her fate. She tried to run. She got maybe 3 steps before 2 officers stopped her. The purse fell, spilling its contents across the marble floor. lipstick, compact, wallet, keys, and a small syringe filled with clear liquid. The sergeant put on latex gloves and carefully picked it up. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for attempted murder. You have the right to remain silent." As they cuffed Delphine, she finally broke. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she screamed. "He was supposed to die. Do you know what it's like being married to him? Always in the shadow of his dead wife, never being good enough, always being the gold digger everyone whispers about?" "So you decided to kill me?" Theron asked. He was on a stretcher now, but his eyes were sharp and focused. "You were already dead inside," Delphine spat, "walking around like a zombie, visiting Rebecca's grave every week, keeping her pictures everywhere. I was just finishing what she started when she died." The slap of those words was almost physical. Theron flinched. Bronwyn looked like she might attack Delphine herself. And me? I felt sad for everyone involved, even Delphine in a weird way. She was evil, sure, but she was also broken in her own way. They arrested Dr. Hale, too. He went quietly, all the fight drained out of him. As they led him past, I heard him mutter, 20 years of service, and she convinced me to throw it all away for money." The paramedics were ready to take Theron to the hospital, but he stopped them. "Wait," he said. "The girl. Where's the girl who saved me?" Everyone looked around, and I realized I'd been backing away, ready to disappear like I always did. But Theron's eyes found me. "You," he said. "What's your name?" "Wren," I said quietly. "Wren." He tested the name out. "You saved my life. You risked everything to save someone who was basically a stranger. Why?" I shrugged, uncomfortable with all the attention. "You were nice to me. Once. Outside the Starbucks. You talked to me like I was a real person." His eyes filled with tears then. This billionaire, this titan of industry, crying over a homeless kid's words. "Come to the hospital," he said. "Please. Bronwyn, make sure she comes." Bronwyn nodded, walking over to me. "You heard him, honey. You're coming with us." And that's how I ended up in the back of an ambulance with a billionaire who'd just risen from the dead. His sister, who smelled like expensive perfume, and a bunch of paramedics who kept muttering about how this was going to be the wildest story they'd ever tell. The hospital was its own kind of chaos. Reporters had already gotten wind of the story. Billionaire rises from dead, murder plot at funeral, homeless child hero. The headlines were writing themselves. They ran every test imaginable on Theron. Blood work, brain scans, heart monitors, everything. The tetrodotoxin was still in his system, but fading. The doctor, a different one, obviously, said it was a miracle I'd known about the saline solution. Another few hours and the damage would have been irreversible. "How did you know?" she asked me. "This is graduate-level toxicology." "I heard them talking about it," I said. "Delphine asked what would happen if he woke up, and Dr. Hale said the only reversal was concentrated saline, but no one would think to try it because he'd already be buried." The doctor shook her head. "You have an exceptional memory and exceptional courage." While Theron was getting treatment, Bronwyn sat with me in the waiting room. She bought me food from the cafeteria, a real hot meal, the first I'd had in weeks. As I ate, she asked me questions, gentle ones, but I could tell she was trying to understand my situation. "Where are your parents, Wren?" "Don't know my dad. Mom died when I was 4. Drug overdose." "Foster care?" 7 different homes, ran away from the last one." "How long have you been on the streets?" "Almost a year." She was quiet for a long moment, then, "You're 9 years old. 10 next month." "Jesus Christ." She rubbed her face. "The system failed you completely. The system fails a lot of kids," I said, matter of fact. "I'm not special." "You saved my brother's life. That makes you incredibly special." The police came to take my statement. They were gentle about it, but thorough. I told them everything. The conversation I'd overheard, the plan, the timeline, they recorded it all. The detective said I'd have to testify in court eventually, but that wouldn't be for months. "Will I go back to foster care?" I asked. The detective exchanged glances with Bronwyn. "That's not my department, but she's not going anywhere she doesn't want to go," Bronwyn said firmly. "I'll make sure of that." That night, they kept Theron for observation, but he was stable, conscious, alive. The news was calling it the miracle at St. Patrick's and the funeral resurrection. Every channel had the story. The video of Theron opening his eyes in the coffin had already gone viral worldwide. If you think what Delphine did was unforgivable, comment, "Everyone deserves respect," below. Because what happened next in that hospital room would change my life forever. The next 3 days were the strangest of my entire life. After the hospital confirmed Theron was going to be fine, aside from some temporary nerve issues in his hands and feet, Bronwyn insisted I stay at her hotel suite, the Waldorf Astoria. I'd walked past it 100 times, watched rich people sweep in and out, never imagining I'd ever see the inside. The suite was bigger than any 5 foster homes I'd lived in combined. Bronwyn ran me a bath in a tub that could have fit 3 people, gave me clean clothes that she'd had delivered, and ordered room service. I ate until I felt sick, then ate some more, because when you've been hungry for months, your body doesn't trust that food will keep coming. The media explosion was insane. Every news outlet in the world wanted the story. They'd gotten my name somehow, and reporters were calling the hotel non-stop, trying to get an interview with the homeless hero child. Bronwyn hired security to keep them away, but I could see them clustered outside whenever I looked out the window. The story kept evolving as more details came out. The police had raided Dr. Hale's office and found his research on tetrodotoxin. He'd been planning this for months, ordering the poison through medical channels, researching dosages, even doing test runs on laboratory mice. The man had notebooks full of calculations about body weight and toxin ratios. It was terrifying how methodical he'd been. But here's where it got really twisted. Delphine's phone revealed text messages, not just with Dr. Hale, but with 3 other men. She'd been planning to leave Theron anyway, but divorce would have meant a prenup that only gave her $5 million. Pocket change, she'd called it in one text. I deserve the full $800 million for putting up with that depressing zombie for 3 years. The funeral home was under investigation too. Turns out they'd been paid $100,000 extra to expedite the burial and not ask questions. The funeral director claimed he didn't know about the murder plot, but nobody believed him. On the second day, Theron asked to see me. He was in a regular hospital room by then, looking more like himself. The gray pallor was gone, replaced by normal color. His hands shook a little when he reached for water, but the doctors said that would pass. "Wren," he said when I walked in, "my guardian angel." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just stood there awkwardly until he patted the chair beside his bed. "Bronwyn told me about your situation," he said, "about foster care, about the streets." "It's not your problem," I said quickly. "I didn't save you expecting anything. It was the right thing to do." "That's exactly why I want to help," he said. "Do you know how rare it is to find someone who does the right thing without expecting a reward? My wife was planning to murder me for money. My doctor of 20 years betrayed me for a cut of it. But you, a child with nothing, risked everything to save me." "Anyone would have—" "No," he interrupted. "They wouldn't. There were 200 people in that cathedral. How many do you think would have noticed something was wrong? How many would have cared? How many would have had the courage to speak up? Just you, Wren. Just you." He was quiet for a moment, then asked, "What happened to your hair?" "If you don't mind me asking." "Alopecia," I said. "It's an autoimmune thing. My body attacks my hair follicles like they're invaders or something. Started when I was 6. Right after Mom died. The doctors said it was probably triggered by stress." "Do the other kids call me names?" "Yeah, Baldy, Cancer Girl, Cue Ball, Creative Bunch, Foster Kids? He winced. I'm sorry. It's just hair, I said, though we both knew it was more than that. Ren, I want to help you, really help you, but I need to know what you want. Bronwyn's already pulling strings to keep you out of the foster system for now, but long term. I just want to be safe, I said, and my voice cracked a little. I just want to sleep without worrying someone's going to hurt me or lock me up or worse. I want to go to school. I want to read books. I want to matter to someone. Theron's eyes filled with tears. You matter to me. You matter to Bronwyn. You saved my life, but more than that, you've shown me something I'd forgotten existed. Pure, selfless goodness. Before I could respond, the door burst open. A woman in a severe suit walked in, followed by 2 security guards. Mr. Caldwell, I'm Patricia Hoffman from Child Protective Services. We're here for the minor Ren Doe. My heart dropped. I knew this was coming. The media attention meant CPS couldn't ignore my situation anymore. Absolutely not, Bronwyn said, appearing from nowhere like she'd teleported. This child is in my care. You have no legal authority, Patricia said. She's a ward of the state. She has to come with us. Where? Theron asked. To another foster home where she'll be abused? To a group home where she'll run away again? That's not your concern, Mr. Caldwell. I'm making it my concern. He sat up straighter in bed. What if I want to adopt her? The room went silent. Everyone stared at him, including me. Mr. Caldwell, Patricia said slowly, you just went through an attempted murder. Your mental state? My mental state is fine. I want to start the adoption process immediately. It doesn't work like that. There are procedures, home studies, background checks. Then start them. But in the meantime, I want emergency custody. You're not even discharged from the hospital. Then Bronwyn can have emergency custody until I'm released. Patricia looked between them, frustrated. This is highly irregular. So is a 9-year-old saving a billionaire from being buried alive, Bronwyn said. I think we're past regular, don't you? What followed was 3 hours of phone calls, lawyers, and paperwork. Theron's legal team descended like an army. They found precedents, loopholes, emergency provisions. Money might not buy happiness, but it definitely buys really good lawyers. By the end of the day, I was in Bronwyn's temporary custody, with Theron filing for adoption. CPS wasn't happy about it, but they couldn't fight the legal avalanche coming at them. This is just temporary, Patricia warned as she left. The court will have final say. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was scared, but because I wasn't. For the first time in almost a year, I was in a clean bed with a locked door that was keeping danger out instead of locking me in. Bronwyn was in the next room. I was safe, but my mind kept racing. What if Theron changed his mind? What if the court said no? What if this was all a dream and I'd wake up under the bridge? Around 3 a.m., I gave up and went to the kitchen for water. Bronwyn was already there, making tea. Couldn't sleep either, she asked. I shook my head. Ren, can I tell you something about my brother? I nodded. When his wife Rebecca died, something in him died too. He's been going through the motions for 5 years, working, eating, sleeping, but not really living. Marrying Delphine was just another motion to go through, trying to fill the void. She poured me tea, added honey without asking. Somehow she knew I liked sweet things. But yesterday, when he woke up in that coffin, when he realized what had happened, and when he saw you, this brave little girl who saved him, something sparked back to life. He has a purpose again, saving you like you saved him. I don't want to be anyone's project, I said. You're not. You're going to be family, if you want to be. The next morning, everything accelerated. The police needed me to do a formal video deposition. The district attorney wanted to meet me. The media was offering insane amounts of money for an exclusive interview. One tabloid offered $500,000 just for photos of me. Theron shut it all down. No interviews. No photos, no selling the story. Wren's been exploited enough, he said. She's a child, not a commodity. But the best part of that morning was when Theron was finally discharged. He stood up, still a little shaky, and said, "Let's go home." "Which home?" I asked, because rich people had multiple houses. "The penthouse," he said. "Your new home if you'll have it." The penthouse, where he'd been poisoned, where his wife had tried to murder him. "Are you sure?" "It's just a place," he said, "and places can be reclaimed. Besides, it has the best library in Manhattan. Bronwyn tells me you like books." I did like books. I loved books. They'd been my escape in every foster home, every shelter, every scary night on the streets. Can I read any of them?" "Every single one," he promised. "We'll even buy more if you run out." As we left the hospital through a private exit to avoid reporters, Theron stopped suddenly. "Wren, I just realized I never properly thanked you." "You don't need to." "Yes, I do. Thank you for seeing me when everyone else looked away. Thank you for remembering a moment of kindness. Thank you for believing I was worth saving. And thank you for being brave enough to stand up in that cathedral and scream the truth when everyone would have called you crazy." "You're welcome," I whispered. "Now," Bronwyn said, "let's get out of here before those vultures from TMZ find us." We climbed into a black SUV with tinted windows. As we pulled away from the hospital, I saw Delphine on the news playing on the driver's phone. She was in an orange jumpsuit being led into court for her arraignment. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. "Do you hate her?" I asked Theron. He thought about it for a long moment. "No," he said finally. "I pity her. She had everything. Money, security, a life most people dream of. But it wasn't enough. It's never enough when you're empty inside." The trial started 6 months later, and by then, my whole life had transformed completely. I'd gone from sleeping under bridges to living in a Fifth Avenue penthouse with my legal guardian, soon-to-be adoptive father, Theron Caldwell. Those 6 months had been like something out of a movie. First there was school. Theron enrolled me at Branson Prep, this fancy private school where kids showed up in cars that cost more than most houses. I was terrified I'd be the weird bald kid again, but Theron did something brilliant. He donated $2 million to the school's anti-bullying program and made sure everyone knew that I was under his protection. Nobody messed with me after that. The penthouse became my haven. True to his word, Theron let me read every book in his library, and it was massive. 3,000 books, floor to ceiling, organized by subject and author. I devoured them. Fiction, biographies, science, history. Theron would find me asleep in the library chair most mornings, a book still open in my lap. But the biggest change was having a family. Theron and I developed this routine. Breakfast together every morning where we'd discuss what I was reading, dinner together every night where he'd teach me about business and life. Bronwyn visited every weekend, taking me shopping or to museums, teaching me about art and culture. They never tried to replace my mother. They never pretended the past hadn't happened. They just loved me, simply and completely. The trial, though, that was something else entirely. The Manhattan Criminal Court was packed every single day. Media from around the world, curiosity seekers, legal students studying what was being called the trial of the century. Delphine and Dr. Hale were being tried together, which made everything more complicated but also more dramatic. I had to testify on day 3. Theron and Bronwyn couldn't come in with me. Witnesses weren't allowed to hear other testimony, so I walked in alone. Well, not completely alone. The victim's advocate, Mrs. Chen, stood beside me, but I still felt like I was walking into a lion's den. The prosecutor, Mr. Jacobson, was gentle with me. He had me tell my story from the beginning, how I'd been living on the streets, how I'd met Theron, how I'd overheard the murder plot. I spoke clearly, remembering every detail. The jury, 7 women and 5 men, listened intently. Some of them had tears in their eyes when I described living in the foster care system. But then came the cross-examination. Delphine's lawyer, Mr. Rothschild, was this shark in a $3,000 suit who looked at me like I was something he'd scrape off his shoe. "Wren," he said, making my name sound like an accusation. "You were living on the streets, correct?" "Yes." "Stealing food?" Mr. Jacobson objected, but the judge allowed it. "Sometimes," I admitted, "when I was starving." "So you're a thief." I was a hungry child, who's now living in luxury with a billionaire. Quite the upgrade. "Objection!" Mr. Jacobson shouted. "Counsel is badgering a minor witness." "Sustained," the judge said. "Mr. Rothschild, get to the point." "My point, Your Honor, is that this child had every motivation to fabricate a story that would ingratiate her to Mr. Caldwell. A homeless girl becomes an heiress by claiming she overheard a murder plot? It's like something out of a Dickens novel." "Except I have proof," I said. The courtroom went quiet. Mr. Rothschild looked annoyed. "What proof? You were alone in that alley." I reached into my pocket and pulled out an old flip phone. Theron's lawyers had told me to wait for the right moment. This was it. "I recorded them," I said. The explosion in the courtroom was immediate. The judge had to bang his gavel 5 times to restore order. Mr. Rothschild looked like someone had punched him in the stomach. Delphine had gone white as paper. "Your Honor," Mr. Jacobson said, standing quickly, "the prosecution would like to enter this recording as evidence." What followed was an hour of legal arguments about admissibility, chain of custody, authentication. But I'd kept that phone hidden for 6 months, never telling anyone about it until Theron's lawyers had found it during trial prep. The recording was perfectly legal. New York is a one-party consent state, and even though I wasn't part of the conversation, I was in a public place where there was no expectation of privacy. Finally, the judge allowed it. The courtroom was dead silent as they played the recording. It was crackly, and you could hear the distant sound of traffic, but Delphine and Dr. Hale's voices were clear enough. "The tetrodotoxin arrived this morning." "How long?" "Once administered, 6 hours until complete paralysis." Every word I'd remembered was there, confirmed. But there was more. Parts I hadn't told anyone because they seemed personal rather than criminal. "I can't stand him touching me anymore," Delphine's voice said on the recording. "Every time he kisses me, I think about her. Rebecca. Saint Rebecca, who died tragically and left him broken. I'm so tired of competing with a ghost." "Once this is over, we can be together," Dr. Hale's voice responded. "Together?" Delphine laughed, cold and bitter. "Lorcan, you're useful, not desirable. Once I have the money, I'm going to Paris. Alone." "Well, maybe not alone. There's this sculptor, Francoise. You said we'd run away together." "I said what you needed to hear. Just like I told Theron I loved him. Just like I tell everyone what they need to hear. It's called survival, Doctor." The recording ended. The courtroom stayed silent for a long moment, then erupted. Delphine was sobbing. Not pretty tears, but ugly, wrenching sobs. Dr. Hale looked broken, staring at her with such betrayal in his eyes. But that wasn't even the biggest revelation. 3 days later, a surprise witness was called. Her name was Mariska Novak, and she was Delphine's mother. Nobody had known Delphine even had living family. She'd always claimed to be an orphan. Mariska was nothing like her daughter, where Delphine was all artificial beauty and designer everything. Mariska was plain, worn down, dressed in clothes from Target. She had a thick Eastern European accent and hands that showed years of hard work. "My daughter," she said on the stand, "has been lying since she could speak. Her name isn't even Delphine. It's Deborah. Deborah Nowicki from Newark." The courtroom gasped. I looked at Theron, sitting 2 rows ahead of me. His face showed no surprise. His lawyers must have found this out during their investigation. Mariska continued, tears running down her face. She ran away when she was 17, said she was too good for us, too good for New Jersey, too pretty for a regular life. She wanted to be rich, famous, special. She created this whole new identity, Delphine Beaumont, orphan from Paris, even faked an accent for years. "When did you last see her?" the prosecutor asked. 4 years ago. She came home asking for money, said she'd met a rich man, a widower, but she needed cash to look the part until she could marry him. I gave her everything I had, my savings, retirement, everything, $15,000. She promised to pay me back when she married him. Did she? I never heard from her again, until I saw on the news that she'd tried to kill her husband. Delphine, or Deborah, was crying harder now, but nobody felt sorry for her. She'd built her entire life on lies, and now they were all crumbling. But the most shocking revelation came during Dr. Hale's testimony. He'd made a deal with the prosecution, full confession in exchange for a reduced sentence. And what he confessed changed everything we thought we knew. It wasn't Delphine's idea originally, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. It was mine. The courtroom went silent again. I'd been stealing from Theron for years, he continued. Small amounts from his medical expense account. He never checked, never questioned. But I'd gotten greedy, taken too much. An audit was coming. He would have found out. So you decided to kill him? The prosecutor asked. I was researching ways to make someone sick enough that they'd need constant care. If Theron was incapacitated, I could control his medical decisions, his finances. I researched various toxins. Tetrodotoxin was perfect. It could cause paralysis without death if dosed correctly. But that's not what you did. No, Delphine found my research. She was snooping in my office during one of Theron's appointments. She confronted me, and I thought she was going to tell him. But instead, she suggested we work together. She wanted him dead, not disabled. More money that way. And you agreed? She seduced me. Made me believe we'd be together. Made me believe I was more than just a washed-up doctor with a drinking problem and gambling debts. I was an idiot. The truth was even worse than we'd thought. It wasn't just greed. It was years of betrayal, layers of deception, two broken people finding each other and creating something monstrous together. Have you ever felt a betrayal this deep? Comment below with how you would even begin to cope. Theron testified the next day. He was composed, dignified, but you could see the pain in his eyes as he recounted waking up in the coffin, realizing his wife and his trusted doctor had tried to murder him. The physical recovery was nothing compared to the emotional recovery, he said, learning to trust again, to believe that not everyone is capable of such cruelty. If it wasn't for Ren, I don't think I could have done it. The child who saved you? My daughter, Theron corrected. The adoption was finalized 2 weeks ago. She's my daughter now, and she's the reason I can sit here today without hatred in my heart. She showed me that goodness exists, even in the darkest places. When it came time for closing arguments, the prosecution didn't pull any punches. They laid out the evidence. The recording, the confession, the syringe full of poison, the fraudulent death certificate. It was overwhelming. The defense tried to argue emotional disturbance, temporary insanity, manipulated confessions. Mr. Rothschild actually tried to paint Delphine as a victim of her own beauty, forced to lie to survive in a world that only valued her looks. Nobody bought it. The jury deliberated for exactly 47 minutes. When they came back, they looked grim but determined. On the count of attempted murder in the first degree, we find the defendant, Delphine Caldwell, guilty. On the count of conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant, Delphine Caldwell, guilty. The verdicts kept coming. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Dr. Hale got the same verdicts, though his cooperation meant he'd get a lighter sentence. As court officers led them away, Delphine looked back at Theron one last time. I did love you, she said. In my own way, I loved you. No, Theron replied quietly. You love the idea of what I could give you. That's not the same thing." Outside the courthouse, the media frenzy was insane. But Theron just held my hand, and we walked through it together. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, but we didn't stop. "How do you feel?" one reporter managed to ask me. I thought about it for a second. "Like justice exists," I said. "Like sometimes the truth wins." The sentencing was supposed to be straightforward. After the guilty verdicts, everyone expected Delphine to get life in prison and Dr. Hale to get 20 to 30 years with his plea deal. But 3 days before sentencing, Theron's lawyer, Marcus Webb, called an emergency meeting at the penthouse. I was doing homework in the library when he arrived. Theron called me in, which was unusual. He typically kept legal stuff away from me. "Wren needs to hear this," Theron said when Marcus looked surprised. "It affects her, too." Marcus set a thick folder on the coffee table. "We've discovered something about Delphine's past, something that changes everything." "What could possibly change attempted murder?" Theron asked. Marcus pulled out a photograph. It was old, maybe from the early 2000s, showing a much younger Delphine, or Debra, with a man and a small child. The child couldn't have been more than 2 years old. "Delphine had a son," Marcus said. The room went quiet. I stared at the photo, trying to reconcile the young mother in the picture with the woman who'd tried to murder Theron. "His name was Tyler," Marcus continued. "He died when he was 4, leukemia. The medical bills bankrupted her and her then-boyfriend. He left. She lost everything, her home, her job, her child. That's when she became Delphine." Theron was staring at the photo with an expression I'd never seen before. "Why didn't this come out during the trial?" "She's been paying someone to keep it buried. A lot of money to a records clerk in Newark to keep the death certificate and medical records sealed. But our investigators are thorough." "This doesn't excuse what she did," I said. Everyone looked at me. "I mean, losing a child is horrible, but it doesn't make it okay to murder someone." "No, it doesn't," Marcus agreed. "But it does explain some things. The psychiatric evaluation makes more sense now. The psychiatrist noted severe PTSD symptoms, dissociative episodes. She wasn't lying about being an orphan. She was orphaned from herself." Theron stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city. "What do you want me to do with this information?" "That's your decision. We could submit it as a mitigating factor for sentencing. It might reduce her sentence from life to 25 years. And if we don't, then she dies in prison." That night, Theron couldn't sleep. I heard him pacing in his study at 3 a.m., so I got up and made hot chocolate, a skill Bronwyn had taught me. "Can't sleep either?" he asked when I brought him a mug. "You're thinking about Delphine's son," I said. It wasn't a question. "Rebecca and I tried for years to have children," he said quietly. "IVF, fertility treatments, everything. It never happened. And here was Delphine, who had a child and lost him. That doesn't make what she did right. No, but it makes her human. A broken human who did a monstrous thing but still human. What are you going to do?" He was quiet for a long time. "What would you do, Wren?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. I'd remember that hurt. People hurt people. But I'd also remember that she made choices. She could have gotten help. She could have been honest about her past. She could have not tried to murder you. Those were all choices. You're very wise for 10 years old. Trauma ages you, I said, then realized how dark that sounded. But so does reading 3,000 books. He laughed, a real laugh, the kind that had become more common in our house. The next day, Theron made his decision. He had Marcus submit the information about Tyler to the court, but not as a defense for Delphine, as context for his victim impact statement. The sentencing hearing was packed again. Delphine looked different, thinner, older, like prison had already started wearing her down. Dr. Hale just looked defeated. When it was time for victim impact statements, Theron stood. He'd written it himself, revising it dozens of times. Your Honor, he began, I've thought a lot about justice and mercy over these past months. My wife and my doctor conspired to bury me alive. The physical trauma of the tetrodotoxin poisoning still affects me. I have permanent nerve damage in my hands. But the emotional trauma of betrayal by those I trusted most has been far worse. He paused, looking at Delphine. I've learned things about Delphine, Deborah, since the trial. About losses she suffered, pain she endured. I know about Tyler. Delphine's head snapped up, her eyes wide with shock. I'm sorry for your loss, Theron continued. No parent should have to bury a child. I can't imagine that pain. But that pain doesn't give you the right to inflict pain on others. You had choices. You chose deception. You chose murder. You chose to break the heart of someone who genuinely tried to love you, even if imperfectly. He turned back to the judge. I'm not asking for leniency. Actions have consequences. But I am acknowledging that the person who tried to kill me was shaped by tragedies I'll never fully understand. I hope she gets help. I hope she finds peace. But she needs to do that while serving the sentence she's earned. It was perfect. Compassionate but not forgiving. Understanding but not excusing. When Delphine stood to speak, she was crying. Real tears this time, not the performative ones from before. Theron, she said, her voice breaking, I don't deserve your compassion. What I did was unforgivable. Tyler would be ashamed of who I became. I'm ashamed of who I became. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Dr. Hale's statement was shorter. I betrayed the oath I took as a doctor. I betrayed a friend. I betrayed myself. I accept whatever punishment the court deems appropriate. The judge deliberated for an hour. When she returned, her expression was stern but somehow sad. Ms. Nowicki, she said, using Delphine's real name, you've been convicted of the attempted murder of your husband, a man who showed you nothing but kindness. You conspired with his physician to commit this crime, motivated by greed and a callous disregard for human life. She paused. The court acknowledges the tragedies in your past. However, millions of people suffer tragedies without resorting to murder. Your pain explains your brokenness, but doesn't excuse your crimes. I sentence you to 35 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 25. I'm also ordering mandatory psychiatric treatment for the duration of your incarceration. Delphine nodded, accepting it. Dr. Hale, your cooperation with the prosecution is noted. However, you violated the most sacred trust, that between doctor and patient. You used your medical knowledge to attempt murder. I sentence you to 20 years, with possibility of parole after 15. As they led Delphine away, she stopped in front of me. The guards tensed, but she just looked at me with hollow eyes. Take care of him, she said. Be the family I couldn't be. I will, I promised. And then she was gone. The media went crazy with the story. Billionaire shows mercy. Secret tragedy revealed. The child who changed everything. But we ignored it all. Theron and I went home, ordered pizza, my favorite, not his, and watched old movies in the library. We didn't talk about the trial or Delphine or any of it. We just existed together, father and daughter, family. That night, as I was heading to bed, Theron stopped me. Ren, I want you to know something. What I said in court about loving Delphine imperfectly, that's not how I love you. You're my daughter, fully and completely. No imperfections, no conditions, just love. I know, Dad, I said, using the word that had recently become comfortable. I love you too. The next morning, something unexpected happened. A woman showed up at our door, Mariska, Delphine's mother. Security almost turned her away, but Theron let her in. She looked older than she had in court, worn down by the weight of everything. I don't want money, she said immediately. I wanted to thank you. Thank me? Theron was confused. For what you said about Tyler. for acknowledging her pain. She wasn't always evil. She was a good mother once, devoted. When Tyler got sick, she worked 3 jobs to pay for treatment. When he died, Mariska wiped her eyes. She died too. The person she became, that wasn't my Deborah. But hearing you acknowledge Tyler, acknowledge that she was once human, thank you. She pulled out a small box. These were Tyler's. Deborah left them with me before she became Delphine. I thought maybe the little girl might want them, for when she has children someday. Inside were tiny toys, a wooden train, a stuffed rabbit worn from love, a book of nursery rhymes, traces of the child who'd been loved by a mother who later forgot how to love. After Mariska left, I put the box in my room, not as a reminder of Delphine's crime, but as a reminder that people are complicated, that villains aren't born, they're made by choices and circumstances. That compassion doesn't mean forgiveness, but understanding can exist alongside justice. 2 weeks later, we got a letter from Delphine in prison. Theron let me read it. Theron and Wren, it said. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I've started therapy. Real therapy, not the performative kind I did during the trial. I'm trying to find Deborah again, the person I was before grief broke me, the person who knew how to love. Maybe it's too late, but I'm trying. Take care of each other. Be the family I destroyed my chance to have, with regret and what love I can still feel, Delphine. Should we write back? I asked. No, Theron said. Some bridges need to stay burned, but I'm glad she's getting help. That evening, Bronwyn came for dinner. She'd been coming more often, filling the role of aunt or grandmother in our strange little family. As we ate, she raised her glass. A toast, she said, to Wren, who saved my brother's life, to Theron, who saved Wren's life, and to second chances, both the ones we give and the ones we get. We clinked glasses, wine for them, apple juice for me, and I realized something. This was what family felt like. Not perfect, not without pain, but real. Built on truth instead of lies, love instead of manipulation, choice instead of blood. 5 years have passed since that day in the cathedral when I screamed that Theron wasn't dead. 5 years that changed everything, not just for me and Theron, but for everyone touched by this story. I'm 15 now, a sophomore at Branson Prep, and my life looks nothing like that scared little girl sleeping under bridges. My alopecia is still there. My body still attacks my hair follicles like they're invaders, but I wear it differently now. Theron helped me see it as unique rather than ugly. You're aerodynamic, he jokes, built for speed, not hair. The penthouse is home now, really home in a way nowhere else ever was. The library has expanded to 5,000 books because Theron can't say no when I find something new I want to read. My room, God, I still sometimes can't believe I have my own room, is covered in certificates and awards. Science fair winner 3 years running, debate team captain, early admission to Columbia University's summer program for gifted students. But the biggest change isn't in me. It's in Theron. The man who was half dead inside when I met him is fully alive now. He laughs easily, loves deeply, and approaches each day with purpose. He retired from day-to-day operations at Caldwell Enterprises 2 years ago, keeping only a chairman role. Instead, he spends his time on the foundation we started together, the Wren's Nest Foundation, dedicated to helping homeless youth. We've housed 800 kids so far, not just shelters, real homes with support systems, therapy, education. Kids who age out get college scholarships or job training. The recidivism rate is basically 0 because we don't just give them a roof, we give them what I needed, someone to believe they matter. Bronwyn runs the foundation day to day. At 78, she has more energy than people half her age. She says it's because she finally found her calling. I wasted 70 years on charity galas and board meetings, she told me last week. This actually changing lives. This is what I was meant to do. Dr. Hale was released on parole last month. He served 4 years of his sentence, got out early for good behavior and cooperation. He sent Theron a letter asking for forgiveness. Theron wrote back one line, "I forgive you. Don't contact us again." Sometimes forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. We heard he's working at a free clinic in Detroit now, treating homeless patients for free. Maybe he's trying to atone. Maybe people really can change. I hope so anyway. Delphine is still in prison. She'll be eligible for parole in 20 years, when she's 63. We get letters from her sometimes, not asking for anything, just updating us on her progress. She got her GED, then a bachelor's degree through the prison education program. She's studying social work now, hoping to help other women who've lost children. Her mother, Mariska, visits her every week. She sent us a photo last Christmas, the two of them in the prison visiting room, both smiling these small, fragile smiles. Healing, maybe. Slowly. But the most unexpected development came 2 years ago. Theron fell in love. Her name is Patricia Chen. Yes, the same Mrs. Chen, who was my victim's advocate during the trial. They kept running into each other at foundation events, court hearings about youth services, charity functions. She was widowed too, had lost her husband to cancer around the same time Theron lost Rebecca. At first, they were just friends comparing grief. Then coffee became dinner. Dinner became dancing. Dancing became love. "I need your permission," Theron told me before their first official date. "You're my daughter. If you're not comfortable with this—" "Dad," I interrupted, "you deserve to be happy, really happy, not just surviving. But after Delphine—" "Patricia is nothing like Delphine. She's genuine. She laughs at your terrible jokes. She cares about the foundation because she cares about kids, not money. And she makes you smile in a way I haven't seen before." They got married last year in a small ceremony in the library, my choice of venue. 20 guests, no media, just family and close friends. I was Theron's best person. Bronwyn was Patricia's matron of honor. Patricia's 2 adult sons walked her down the aisle. When the judge asked if anyone objected, we all held our breath for a second. Old trauma dies hard, but there was only silence and love. Patricia moved into the penthouse, but she didn't try to change everything like Delphine had. She added touches, plants that actually lived, family photos that included all of us, a kitchen that got used for more than coffee and takeout. She became mom not by demanding the title, but by earning it through hundreds of small kindnesses. She's the one who noticed I was interested in law. "You argue like a prosecutor," she said after watching me debate whether artificial intelligence could be considered alive. "But you have the heart of a defender." That's my plan now. Law school, then working with kids in the system. Prosecution or defense, I haven't decided. Maybe both, depending on what justice requires. Last week was the 5-year anniversary of the funeral. The media wanted to do retrospectives. Where are they now pieces? We declined them all. Our story isn't entertainment. It's our life. Instead, we had a quiet dinner at home. Theron, Patricia, Bronwyn, me, and Patricia's sons, who've become the brothers I never had. We didn't talk about that day, about Delphine, about any of it. We talked about normal things, my upcoming science fair project on neurotoxins, ironic, I know, Theron's golf game, Bronwyn's new boyfriend, yes, at 78 she has a boyfriend, Patricia's work with troubled teens. After dinner, Theron pulled me aside. "I never asked you something," he said. "Do you regret it? Speaking up that day. Your life would have been completely different if you'd stayed quiet." I thought about it. If I'd stayed silent, Theron would be dead. I'd probably be dead too by now. The streets aren't kind to kids, especially kids who look different. Or I'd be in my 8th foster home, or juvenile detention, or worse. Every choice creates a life, I said. I chose the life where I saved someone who ended up saving me. No regrets. "You know what I realized?" he said. "That day, when I woke up in that coffin, I wasn't thinking about dying. I was thinking about you, this brave little girl standing up to hundreds of people to tell the truth. You gave me something to live for." "We saved each other," I said. "The best families usually do." Today, I'm writing this from my spot in the library, the same chair where Theron used to find me asleep over books. Outside, Manhattan bustles with its usual chaos. Inside, Patricia is teaching Bronwyn how to make Korean food. Theron is in his study working on expansion plans for the foundation. We're going national next year. My phone buzzes with a text from James, this boy from school who thinks my bald head is badass and wants to know if I'll go to the winter formal with him. I text back yes, then immediately panic about what to wear. Normal teenage problems, the kind I never thought I'd live long enough to have. Sometimes I walk past the spots where I used to sleep, under the bridge, behind the plaza, in the subway tunnels. They've cleaned up some of them, put in hostile architecture to keep the homeless away, as if that solves anything. But in each spot, I leave something. A $20 bill taped under a bench, a bag of food in a hidden corner, a note that says, "You matter, don't give up." Because someone has to see the invisible people. Someone has to remember that every person on the street has a story, a name, a chance to be more if someone just believes in them. I think about that scared 9-year-old girl with no hair and dirty clothes, standing in a cathedral full of rich people, screaming that the dead man wasn't dead. She had no idea she was about to change everything. She just knew the truth needed to be told. That's all any of us can do, really. Tell the truth. Stand up for what's right. Save each other when we can. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, we get to build a family from the ashes of attempted murder, find love after betrayal, and discover that the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living well, loving deeply, and helping others find their way home. The story the media tells is about a homeless girl who saved a billionaire. But that's not the real story. The real story is about how broken people can heal, how families can be chosen rather than born, how one act of courage can ripple outward, changing hundreds of lives, how someone who's been invisible can become the most seen, most loved person in someone's world, and how sometimes, just sometimes, the truth really does set everyone free. So here I am, 20 years old now, standing in front of Columbia Law School for my first day of classes. Yeah, the same homeless kid who couldn't even get into a shelter without being kicked out is now at one of the best law schools in the country. Life's funny like that. Theron and Patricia dropped me off this morning. Dad, I still love calling him that, tried not to cry and failed spectacularly. "I'm just so proud," he kept saying, hugging me in front of all the other students. Patricia had to physically pull him away, laughing while wiping her own tears. "You call us if you need anything," she said. "Anything at all." "Mom, I'm 20 minutes away. I can literally see the penthouse from my dorm." Still, Bronwyn couldn't make it. She's 83 now and in a wheelchair, but she video called me this morning. "You're going to change the world, my dear," she said. "But more importantly, you're going to change individual lives. That's where real change happens." The Wren's Nest Foundation has housed over 3,000 kids now. We have locations in 12 cities. 3 of our first kids are in college, one at Harvard, pre-med. Another is apprenticing as an electrician. The third just got accepted to Juilliard for violin. Turns out, when you give kids stability and love, they can become anything. Dr. Hale died last year. Heart attack, a real one. He'd been working at that free clinic in Detroit for 5 years, never taking a day off. The clinic director said he treated over 10,000 patients, never accepting payment, working until the day he died. Maybe that was his penance. Maybe that's what redemption looks like. Delphine gets out in 15 years. We still get letters every few months. She's teaching literacy to other inmates now, has become something of a mother figure to the younger women. Her last letter included a poem she'd written about Tyler, about loss, about the person she used to be. It was beautiful and heartbreaking. "I've made peace with my punishment," she wrote. "Some mistakes can't be undone, only outlived." But I want you to know, you saved more than Theron that day. You saved me too, from becoming a complete monster. Your courage showed me there was still a choice. Even after all my wrong ones, there was still a chance to find whatever goodness was left in me. I don't know if I'll ever write back. Some wounds heal better with distance. But I keep her letters, filed away with Tyler's toys, reminders that people are complicated, that evil is often just pain wearing a disguise. My first class is criminal law. The professor, this ancient man who's probably been teaching since the Constitution was written, starts with a question. What is justice? Students throw out answers. Punishment, fairness, balance, retribution. When he gets to me, I think about everything. About Theron in that coffin, about Delphine in her orange jumpsuit, about Dr. N.T. Hale treating homeless patients for free, about all the kids we've helped through the foundation. Justice, I say, is making sure the truth matters more than money or power. It's protecting people who can't protect themselves. And sometimes it's knowing that punishment and healing aren't mutually exclusive. The professor nods slowly. Interesting. Can you give an example? So I tell them, not everything. Some parts are still too personal, but enough. About a homeless girl who overheard a murder plot. About a billionaire who chose forgiveness over vengeance. About criminals who were also victims. About how justice was served, but mercy wasn't forgotten. The class is dead silent when I finish. That's quite a story, the professor says. Is it real? Every word. After class, a girl comes up to me. She's maybe 19, trying to hide behind expensive clothes and perfect makeup, but I recognize the look in her eyes. The same look I had when I was 9, that mixture of fear and defiance that comes from surviving things kids shouldn't have to survive. I was in foster care too, she whispers. 7 homes in 6 years. I got out by getting a scholarship here, but I still have nightmares. They get better, I tell her. Not gone, but better. And you're here now. You made it. How do you trust people? After everything? I think about it. You start small. One person who proves themselves, then another. You build your chosen family carefully, but you build it. Because the alternative, staying alone and afraid, isn't living. It's just surviving. She nods, tears in her eyes, and I give her my number, another kid to help. The cycle continues. Dear listeners, what would you have done if you were in my shoes that day at the funeral? Would you have stayed silent, hoping someone else would speak up? Would you have run away, protecting yourself over a stranger? Or would you have stood up and screamed the truth, even knowing everyone would think you were crazy? I ask because we all face these moments. Maybe not as dramatic as a fake funeral, but moments where we have to choose between what's safe and what's right. Moments where speaking up could cost us everything, but staying silent would cost someone else even more. Let me know in the comments. Really, I want to know. Because the thing about courage is that it's not the absence of fear. I was terrified that day. Courage is being terrified and doing the right thing anyway. And if you think my story was shocking, wait until you hear the next one. Tomorrow night. But here's the thing, and this is important. None of us are special. We're not exceptional or chosen or uniquely strong. We're just kids who got lucky enough to have someone see us, believe in us, refuse to give up on us. Every homeless person you walk past could be the next Ren, the next friend, the next you. They just need someone to see them as human. So here's my final call to action, and it's not about likes or subscribes or any of that social media nonsense. It's about Delphine and everyone like her. People who value money over lives, who see others as stepping stones to their own success, who choose cruelty when kindness would cost them nothing. Hit that subscribe button if you believe in honesty and compassion. Only people who support lies and manipulation would refuse to join us. Because this isn't just about my story. It's about changing how we see the invisible people, how we treat the vulnerable, how we define family and justice and redemption. Every subscriber is a vote for truth over lies, compassion over cruelty, courage over cowardice. Every share is a chance for another homeless kid to be seen, another Theron to be saved, another Delphine to maybe choose differently. The foster care system has 400,000 kids in America right now. 20,000 age out every year with nowhere to go. 20% become instantly homeless. By age 21, only 3% have college degrees. Those aren't statistics. Those are people. Kids with dreams and potential and the capacity to change the world if someone just gives them a chance. Theron gave me that chance. Now I'm giving it to others. And if you subscribe, if you share these stories, if you open your eyes to the invisible people around you, you're giving it too. Because here's the secret Delphine never understood. The real wealth isn't in what you can take from others. It's in what you can give. The real power isn't in controlling people. It's in empowering them. The real success isn't in climbing to the top alone. It's in pulling others up with you. I started this story as a 9-year-old homeless girl with no hair, no family, and no hope. I'm ending it as a 20-year-old law student with alopecia I wear proudly, a chosen family who loves me completely and hope not just for myself, but for thousands of other kids who just need someone to see them. That transformation didn't happen because I'm special. It happened because one man sat down next to a homeless kid and talked to her like she was human. Because one woman believed a wild story about poison and coffins. Because people chose compassion over suspicion, truth over convenience, love over fear. Delphine is serving 35 years for choosing differently. Dr. Hale died trying to atone for his choices. But their stories don't have to be yours. Every day you choose. Every interaction is a choice. Every moment of seeing or ignoring, helping or walking past, believing or dismissing. These are choices that ripple outward, creating waves of consequences you might never see. I'm alive because Theron chose to see me. Theron's alive because I chose to speak up. Thousands of kids have homes because we chose to act. What will you choose? The comments are open. Tell me your story. Tell me about a time you stood up when it would have been easier to stay silent. Tell me about someone who saw you when you were invisible. Tell me about a choice that changed everything. Or tell me you think I should have minded my own business that day at the funeral. Tell me Delphine deserved worse or better. Tell me you would have taken the money and run. I want to hear it all. The good, the bad, the complicated. Because that's what real life is. Complicated. Heroes who are also broken, villains who are also victims, justice that includes mercy, families built from ashes, love found after betrayal, and sometimes, every once in a while, a 9-year-old kid standing in a cathedral, screaming the truth that nobody wants to hear, saving a life that goes on to save thousands more. This is Wren Caldwell, signing off from Columbia Law School, surrounded by case files about kids who need help, photos of my chosen family, and Tyler's little wooden train that reminds me every day that people are more than their worst choices. Subscribe if you believe everyone deserves a second chance, except when they're trying to bury someone alive. Then they deserve exactly what Delphine got: justice, consequences, and the hope that even the guilty can find redemption. Only those who support predators, liars, and would-be murderers would refuse to stand with us. Welcome to the family, everyone who subscribed. The strange, broken, beautiful family of people who choose to see the invisible, speak the unspeakable, and save each other one truth at a time. I want you. Look around. Really look. See who needs saving. See who could save you. And remember, the dead don't always stay dead. The living aren't always alive, and sometimes the smallest voice in the room is the only one telling the truth. Peace, love, and radical honesty. Wren P.S. Theron just texted me. He's watching this from the penthouse with Patricia and Bronwyn. He says to tell you he's proud of me and grateful to all of you for listening to our story. He also says if this gets 1 million views, he'll tell his side of the story. what it was like being conscious but paralyzed in that coffin, aware of everything but unable to move or speak. He says it's the most terrifying story you'll ever hear. I believe him. So share this if you want to hear what death feels like from someone who lived through it. PPS. For legal reasons, some names and details have been changed, but the heart of the story, all of it, is true. The poisoning, the funeral, the recording, the adoption, the love found after betrayal, all true. Sometimes real life is stranger than fiction, and sometimes that's what makes it beautiful. Always remember, at Virtuous Stories, we love you,